Hello, everyone. Welcome to Lead Score Monday. I'm Casey Hawkins, joined as always by Chris Carolan and Rylee Powell. So today we are taking a little bit of a pause from our series building our own lead score to talk about what has happened with lead scoring over the last few years and where we think it's going, not just as a routing mechanism, but as a way to provide intelligence across your team. So if you're watching live, drop any questions in the chat and let us know what this is making you think about along the way. We do have something a little different today. We actually have slides, which I don't know if I've ever done on Election Live before. Chris, you did slides one time with part of as you were building the value first framework, right? That was like slide based, or was it no?
No, I actually started building visuals like as I was preparing for each episode. So yeah, that was like halfway through. I'm definitely not as anti-slides as I used to be, as I am now, probably just because it's easier to create visuals now, thanks to AI and thanks to an awesome website. So sometimes people need visuals.
Yeah, I think it's also worth calling out here is that all the slides are created through Claude. Is it Claude Code technically, or?
Yeah.
Okay. Am I allowed to say that is what it was? Because I think that's really loud. Yeah. If you're watching, like I just told Chris the other day that I showed a friend of mine Gamma, which is something I've used to make AI presentations with, and she was like, "Oh my God, Casey, you just saved me 20 hours a week." So that's not what this is about, but I think it's worth adding while we're here.
Yeah, a lot of power, and that's where like it. How do we tie this in to the whole thing? Modern marketing. There you go. Like, it's one thing to be able to use these tools to, like scoring included, to like understand as an individual, like what you can do, what you can build, what's happening, like across the journey. But when you start having to enable teams of people to do things in a standardized way, understand things in a common language kind of way, the ability to use AI to support that is just it's for me should be treated as infrastructure that will allow for that instead of the thing that does everything. It's the thing that can enable just awesome human stuff to happen at scale across teams. So it's been fun putting this together. And I just said it's been fun putting this together, Rylee.
I know.
About a lead scoring presentation. That's where we're at, folks.
Yep.
Well, so today we're talking about lead scoring, what it was, what's changed, and why the questions you may already be asking are the right ones. I'm going to walk through the scoring foundation, and then Chris is going to show us the architecture that makes it all come together for us. So starting off with where we were, and I think you may recognize this. So the old lead scoring tool in HubSpot was primarily built around fit criteria. And honestly, that's because the tool itself didn't work well for measuring recency or frequency. It was straightforward to say plus 20 points if job title contains finance, plus 10 for branch manager, but building anything dynamic around engagement, that ended up being backwards and difficult. So most scores ended up measuring the quality of people based on the properties in the CRM, who they are on paper, without really considering what they were doing. And because scores were primarily being used for handoff from marketing to sales, the threshold, the one that says 100 points means they're ready to go to sales, that number was often arbitrary. It got moved based on internal goals. Sales says they're getting bad matches, so we raised the bar to 150 points, rinse and repeat. The target kept shifting, but it was shifting based on internal frustration, not on the actual human experience on the other end. And then there's the visibility problem. Scores live deep in platform settings, managed by admins, the people who actually needed to understand and act on scoring, marketing, sales, product. They couldn't easily see what was in the score, how it was built, or why someone got the number they got. It ended up being a black box. Now, here's the thing. It still worked sometimes, but that's because in simpler buying processes, this system can work. But as the world gets more complicated, this old approach hits a ceiling. So what's changed now? Well, there were two big shifts that happened almost at the same time. The one on the left, the tool got smarter. The platform can now learn from your actual closed deals, not just your guesses about what matters, and that's a big deal. Now we have multidimensional scoring, so contact fit, company fit, and engagement become separate questions instead of one blended number. You're no longer cramming everything into a single score. And then the DK and recency. A webinar visit from 18 months ago doesn't mean the same thing as one last week, and the tool can finally account for that. And then we have the right side of this. The thinking evolved. We went from who should we call to what do we know. Scoring became about intelligence, not just routing. From product first to customer first. Start with the relationship, not with the SKU. And from one size to right sized. Not every product or segment needs the same level of scoring sophistication, and that actually helps us along the way. So here's the framework that makes this work, the 3 pillars. You may have seen this before if you've been following me for a while. This starts with contact fit, the who. Is this the right person? Are we talking to someone with the right title, the right role, the right level of decision-making authority? This is the stuff that most of you have already been scoring on, and it still really matters. Then there's the company fit, the where. Is this the right organization, right industry, right size, right geo? Do they match your ideal customer profile? This is where things like tech stack, current solutions, and growth signals come in. And then there's the win, the engagement. Are they actively interested right now? Content consumption, event attendance, website visits, email interactions, and critically, recency, frequency, and depth. Not just did they ever engage, but are they engaging now? Separating these 3 dimensions is the foundation of everything that follows. Because when you look at the bottom of this slide, which is super easy to see right now, there we go. The right person at the right company showing active interests, that's fundamentally different signal than any one of these alone. So let's put it all together, because this is when it gets really powerful. Fit alone, you know they match the profile. Right size, right industry, right role. That's valuable, but it doesn't tell you when. You could have the perfect fit company that isn't thinking about you at all right now. That's right company, wrong time. Engagement alone. They're clicking, they're attending, they're downloading. That's exciting, but are they actually a good match for what you offer? Maybe they're a student researching for a paper. Maybe they're a company that would never buy, that's interested but not ideal. But when you combine them, fit plus engagement, now you have something different. They match the profile and they're actively showing interest. That's not just a score, that's intelligence. And at the bottom of this slide, this is the sentence I want you to take with you. Fit tells you who, engagement tells you when. Together, they tell you what to do next. So when your team gets a signal that combines fit and timing, it changes what they say, when they say it, and how they prioritize their day. It's the difference between here's a list and here's who to call and why. And that's the foundation. Now, Chris is going to show you the architecture for this. You're muted.
And I'm muted. That's a good handoff there. Thank you so much, Casey. So you just walked us through the how, fit, engagement, thresholds, mechanics of a score that works. All of that's real. It matters. You can do all that in HubSpot. So what we're trying to help you with today. It doesn't mean you have to use it all in the way that it's delivered. And I think one of the things we try to help with value for scoring is how can we simplify it so that even though you can spend hours putting super complex scores together, it doesn't like work, traditionally for lots of reasons. The amount of alignment that you need across teams just creates a challenge that a lot of teams have been unable to overcome, right? So you end up with scores that are tough they don't often create a lot of value for the teams at the end of the day. So if you were a client that we were presenting this to, what I'm about to show is, some new ways of thinking. It doesn't mean this is what's being applied tomorrow in your HubSpot portal. So just keep that in mind. But these are like some different words and some different concepts that can, I think, simplify and take the load off of, the score itself, right? So the value path gives you a shared language, for where someone is in the relationship. The unified customer view gives you the complete context around them. And when those two things exist, the score gets simpler because it doesn't have to carry everything, right? So this is what I mean. The value path, 8 stages, starts with audience, someone who knows you exist. And this could go as broad as, total addressable market and any human being that might be in that market and paying attention to the message, right? Moves through researcher, hand raiser, buyer, value creator, adopter, advocate, and champion. Those words, and I can tell you in working with AI, like those words versus acronyms like MQL, SQL, like every human can open up a dictionary to look at the word researcher and they're going to find the same definition, right? Like this is kind of what we're getting at here. We can use the same language. If you can use simplified language across the team, now we're having different conversations and we're not having to explain what these things mean, right? So because that has been challenging, MQL, SQL, we've tried to encode that into the score instead, right? But oftentimes the score is kind of sitting alone in a list of, all it is ranking against other people. We're not thinking about where those people are in the journey, right? So we're thinking, are they a lead? Are they a customer? Are they expanding? We want to know all of these. We have all these questions and we try to answer them with scores. And it just, my opinion hasn't worked very well, right? So alongside the value path, we have the unified customer view, relationship history, engagement patterns, service and commercial context, association depth, everything visible in one place. When you put both of these together, one is the shared language for where someone is, and a complete view of who they are. Again, you don't have to put all the complexity of the business inside of the score. It becomes one signal inside of a system that already has additional context. A recent example. We worked with a company, about 6,000 customers, SaaS platform, health score in HubSpot. And even though I'm talking about health score, like these scores have a way of mattering across the journey. So if you can go to the next slide, please, Casey. Classic setup inside of HubSpot. 9 scoring groups, points for engagement and activity. Looked great on paper. When we pulled the actual data, the customers who had already churned scored a 64. The customers who stayed, also a 64. Less than 1 point apart, I think it was 0.08. The score couldn't tell the difference, and the problem wasn't the formula. The score started everyone at 62 out of 100 before any data came in. Half the scoring groups weren't connected to anything. So the score existed, it just didn't see the customer. So we rebuilt it alongside a unified customer view, connected product usage, payment status, support resolution, like real signals. And if you think about this on the other side, like lead scores, this is where buyer intent signals come into play, like social activity, right? All these different data flows that we can bring in now, like to provide that full context, it's available. After the rebuild, churn customers scored 12 and retained customers scored 50. So 38-point gap where there used to be less than 1 point of gap. Not because the math changed, but because the scoring was connected to something real, like real data that we already had access to in the system, right? We got access to that data and we found that it was important by bringing the context together in the unified view. So this is, the thesis, and it's what Casey's been building from the HubSpot perspective, the 3 different types of scores as well. The score is still a number. It still measures signal intensity, but it doesn't have to carry everything. The value path tells you where someone is. The unified customer view tells you everything else. The score becomes one clean signal inside a system that already has context. That's the shift, right? Our product knowledge, our human expertise, our sales expertise, right, and how we engage, like that's what feeds these views. And these views are what make these scores more meaningful. They all work together. And it actually gets simpler because it's not alone anymore. So some takeaways from this talk today. Like we have access to the answers to these questions, right, in our system. Who in terms of contact fit and at our company fit a little bit too, but also where in terms of company fit and value path. When in terms of engagement, right? What in terms of the score, and how, what is the context in the unified view. And I think that we cannot overestimate the value of simplifying this situation. Like the complexity of score building is what gets in the way of valuable scores. And that is a domino effect of getting in the way of CRM adoption, at the end of the day, right? If I'm seeing scores and I don't know what they mean, or I try to trust in them from the get-go, and I get excited about a high score, and then we get on a call with a customer, and they have no idea, like they clearly should not have gotten that score for whatever reason. Like I'm not going to put myself in that position, very often, right? So simplifying it in this way has a way of bringing teams together in a better way, and hopefully this was helpful to start to simplify for you guys.
I think this is a very helpful way of looking at it. I mean, what you said at the end there if you trust in a score and then, I mean, it doesn't work. I don't know if that's exactly the framing, but that builds distrust, I think, further than just with the score itself. But I think that visibility piece is such a big component, because that's a huge element of the trust is, okay, they said that this is a score of 100, but I don't even see any activity. Like, what? I don't see anything. Why is this a score of 100?
Yeah. And in that use case of like everybody gets a score of 62 on the health score, obviously, like probably from customer stage, like, oh, you're a customer now, like you get a score of 62.
Mm-hmm.
And then the system isn't set up to actually track anything else, so everybody gets the same score. And meanwhile, everybody has more data and access to more technology than they've ever had before to be able to start to put this stuff together. Right. Super curious as our first customer of this presentation, Rylee. Like, curious for your thoughts.
No, I like it. I like this screen in particular. Who, my brain wants to say who, what, when, where, why, how. But who, where, when, what, how. I see.
The natural, it just rolls off the tongue.
Yeah, exactly. Feels so good. No, but I 100% agree. The view is substantial. I mean, that's been, I think, one of the biggest gaps in like the CRM adoption component of things in my mind. Every single person that's ever received like a new lead or whatever from the lead score is like, how can I see what they did? And for the longest time, their response was, just read the activity, like read their entire history in the central pane of HubSpot, and like, observe their every click for the last 30 days. And, no, like that's unreasonable to do. A lot of the stuff that even goes into the scoring might not even appear in that central pane. So having some place of being able to indicate where they are on the score, and then through time, kind of how they progress, which I know HubSpot did a great job of making some improvements there. But then Chris and Casey, you kind of added on to it as well with your own additional views. And then Casey and Chris, I guess, fully agree on y'all's point of the people will, maybe 2 or 3 lead scores they'll get, and they'll be like, it's hot, and make a call, and then find out it's not hot. And then they don't trust the entire system anymore. So then the whole reason that it's built, like I think a primary reason you're building one of these is to pass leads off to sales when you think that sales should be working someone. And if sales confidence in the score starts to degrade, it'll never recover, and you'll never be able to like get people to follow up on the leads that you're sending across, because you're just sending them, things with a pulse and not things that are showing intent or, what the warm leads that sales is always, starving for. So very important to manage that trust as carefully as you can, and, start with lower volume and get the confidence going before you really start to kind of ramp up to the higher volume. And the higher volume might never actually be there. If the lower volume is all that you're able to do by getting some sales accepted rate of 75% or higher, then you got to stay at the low volume.
The subliminal messages that we're trying to send through this broadcast. I was going to go there too. I mean, this is where like the activities themselves start to drive bad build outs, right? Mm-hmm. So like if you want to play the volume game, a sales rep needs a list. Just needs a list. I don't have time to look at all these different places or go to the unified customer view, right? Just show me a list. And now if that's where I got to do my job, I need something that can help me prioritize this list, right? And that's where scores have been. And it's like, at the end of the day, it's not enough context for somebody to really understand. And can we have managers and leaders help people, like, just click right over here to this unified customer view, bam, 30 seconds, right? Oh, by the way, from there, you can call, email, like click into LinkedIn, like do all the things that you're going to do. And it's just a slight change to the process where, even from a volume-based perspective, I mean, adding that 30 to 60 seconds, like if you can do half as much that day, like guaranteed the results are just going to be so much better than not having that context.
One
So
thing
thanks
I
for the
would
feedback, Rylee. I'll work on the ordering of these words on the side.
I mean, like,
well, I don't think you can. Like, I mean, I think that's like.
I think it's the logical way that it's presented, and it's the logical way that all of this is approached and built and implemented. I don't think you should work on it. I didn't realize it was out of order until I started to say who, what, when, where, why, and realized, wait, what's not second? And got into this who's on third, what's on first.
Yeah.
Little trap.
But yeah, I think, like, I talked at the beginning about people would just tell me we need more leads, so let's drop the MQL number down from 100 to 75 and whatever the case may be. And now people are complaining, so we'll go up to 150, whatever. But I think with the unified customer view, once you kind of commit to it, if sales has more people they want to call, it's not saying you can't call people in a different stage, whether they're not hand raisers, they're researchers, or whatever the case may be. It just means that sales knows they're researchers, they're not hand raisers when they pick up the phone. I think that's
why I really like the language of the value path there, because I've always been trying to bang the drum of like, look, if you're trying to do this volume game, that's fine. Don't say we need more MQLs. Say we're going to work less qualified people.
Yeah.
Like, don't change your threshold of what you consider qualified to arbitrarily hit some volume metric. Qualified should be qualified. And if you're only qualifying 10 leads a month and you need the reps to be calling 100 leads a month, send them those 10 and then 90 not qualified leads, but like that are as close to qualified as you can.
Mm-hmm.
So this is the problem with like the MQL like designation and motion, is people try and just change it all the time, where this, value path methodology to me makes a lot more sense, where you're just calling people where they are, and everyone knows what they're getting involved in.
And that's why I like the engagement elements of the new scoring tool so much, because now we can look at people as hot, warm, or cold. We don't just look at them as, oh gosh, Rylee.
Well, yeah, so this is where I
lost him.
I'll just jump into something that I'm not really even formulated my thoughts around, but like have been trying to decide, am I going to bring this up on this or not? And since you kind of went in on it,
I'm scared.
Engagement piece to me, like I think most of us have this idea in mind, just historically, and especially if you've been with HubSpot for a while, that like it's engagement with your brand.
Mm-hmm.
And that is not at all what that is anymore.
Mm-hmm.
There are signals that you're tracking now that person still might have no clue who you are as a company,
mm-hmm.
but they're searching for things that you've identified are like positive signals that indicate pain that you can solve.
Mm-hmm.
And so I'm actively building out a score right now where I'm like at this inflection point, trying to figure out like, am I lumping all of these things in together so that when I send like a cold, warm, hot, and it's hot, but they've done nothing with our brand, am I willing to risk the like rep potential degradation of confidence by them calling that person and them having no idea who the company is, even though they might be in a good buying signal state.
But
I think you need to like delineate further with like, all right, this person is just high pain, but like they don't know who we are, versus like this person is all up on our assets and our brand. And I don't exactly know how you kind of paint that picture, but I think that context to the rep is obviously supremely important rather than, a number.
But isn't that the like where a unified customer view? That's the solve, right?
Potentially, I think it can be used to solve, because with this whole framework, it's taking me a lot to break out of the mindset of like they're in the audience of my company versus like they're in the audience of the problem that I solve for. And that might, because if people are moving from audience to researcher, like that might not mean they're researching ABC company, but they're researching, I need help with this problem. And then, we know that ABC company solves for it. So like, I think depending on, how the value path framework is kind of implemented and managed, and if you're trying to do it at like the value that we provide, the problem that we solve level, not, what is our website and what is our domain level, then I think it helps. But it's still, when you get to that actual handoff, something that should be like spoon fed to the person of like, hey, they've done 10 things positive towards the pain, but no interaction with the brand. Because that's a very different outbound phone call or conversation rather than, hey, they've clicked on 1,000 of our case studies and a bunch of these other different things. So I know I just kind of dumped a hot, steamy, I don't know, out in front of us, but it's just something that I've been like wrestling with right now.
So what is the exact question that you would love to be able to answer? And that's wrestling around?
Well, just how is it that when you're passing these off, like rather, this all kind of jumped on because Casey was like this cold, warm, hot, indication of engagement. And I'm like, there needs to be, either parallel, like cold problem, hot brand, where there's like maybe two, like a XY axis there of like problem engagement versus brand engagement, so that you can kind of rank them on, all right, they're super hot with problem, but they don't know our brand at all, versus like they know our brand a ton, but they're doing nothing anywhere else. Because I think, if that's like a 9 bucket, like a 3x3 thing, then where people are grouped are significantly different conversations.
Yeah.
I don't know if I restated.
I think like that's where like, I mean, the whole company, like, man, if you can align with just doing business with humans,
Yeah.
and then not like worry about, like, if it wasn't for documented ICPs and then like total like target accounts, and just like that drives so much of what we have to like unravel, when if you could just build like scores and engagement understanding around humans, like it's relevance and timing, like that's what you need to be scoring on. And sometimes that's going to be a combination of brand plus engagement, like the quadrant that you're talking about.
Mm-hmm.
Because at some point, and this is where it becomes next to impossible to build this kind of nuance into a score, right? Like sometimes, other parts, like pieces of that quadrant will be more important than other times. Right. And it's like so much of it's situational and most of it's out of your control. So like, can you just create awareness and visibility? But that's what the unified view is designed to do, because at some point the human needs to make a judgment call.
Yeah.
Right. And if all we're giving them is a score, they're making that judgment call after they're already on the call.
Yeah, for sure.
Right. And they'll tell you like, yeah, let me do that. I'm in the best position to do that. And I think the way that you started, like part of the problem is that most businesses do not respect the negative impact of the call when I don't have any idea who you are.
Yeah.
Like, even though I have the pain and you are the solution.
Potentially. Again, I think that's how it goes into if the call is positioned, like if the person making the call is acting like that person should know who they are, I think that is that big negative impact. But like, if you're approaching that call knowing this person is indicating high levels of pain, engagement with no levels of brand engagement, then you're able to walk into that call and say like, hey, we see a lot of people in your position dealing with things like XYZ. We really help solve that. Like, you're not really coming in with that presupposition of, who we are and you should be doing business with us. But it's like that you've taken the time to like find out that person might be dealing with this type of problem that you can kind of help solve. I think that's actually a very good thing. But it's how does what information does that person know before they make that phone call to me? Which is, in your point, that unified view, handing it off and making sure that people understand the information almost at a glance, or with at least some minimal effort of review beforehand, instead of having to go read the entire engagement history for the last 6 months.
Yeah. Like, the only way to make trusted judgment around relevance and timing is to have complete context. Like, and that's what we need to solve for through these views. And I'll say, like, the views plus simplified language, if you got to use this as a trick, use it. But if marketing teams, like, if you've been struggling having real conversations with sales about how to align on what matters and what doesn't, and why the scores suck and why they don't, right? When you show up and say, hey guys, we want to do the scores better for you, like, let's have a conversation, like, they're not interested, right? But if you can say, hey, and also the leaders, it gets easier to get leaders on board. Hey, we need a unified view of our customers. Let's get in a room and talk about what that view is for marketing, for sales, for leaders, right? You got to find a way to have the conversation. And so even though we're saying unified views, that's not like a one size fits all situation, right? It's going to be different to some extent for most businesses. But when you can just understand that everybody on the other side of that view, the story that's trying to be told through that view is, do we know who they are? Do we know where they are in their journey? And are we doing things like which you'd see through engagement? Are we doing things that show that, right? If we know who they are and where they are, we'll be putting content in front of them. We'll be reaching out via LinkedIn, doing outbound that's actually like designed for them because we have that information. Every human on the other side of this is like wants those things understood and expectations met, right? It becomes a lot easier to do that on the first human touch when you have this level of context. And it's never been more accessible to you as an organization. I'm not going to say easy anymore, like, because it's hard to get all the people in the room, get everybody together, build these views out, right? But knowing that you can, like, I think it's gone from not really accessible and kind of a pipe dream to actually like reality, because data is coming in from so many different new places other than email opens and form fills.
Well, anyone have any final thoughts? Chris just landed a lot.
Yep. Let's go, folks.
Get it together.
I think you're right, Chris. I think the form fills, the page views, that's what people know and that's what they feel comfortable and confident in. I wonder, when I put things into a score like our buyer intent signals that we see on companies in HubSpot and things like that, I constantly wonder how reliable those things are. And I think at the end of the day, it's the confidence and the trust. The trust is the real word in those signals. And one way we can build trust is by being transparent through a unified customer view or whatever that ends up looking like for you, but showing, not just handing over something that says 100 and saying, trust me, they're ready to talk to you.
Agreed. Can you refresh and come back to slide 10? Let me see if Rylee likes this better.
Oh.
Who, what, when, where, why? Yeah.
It works. It does. I think I gave the order, the first order. I was just like, there's a thread here. Let's just do this. Right.
Mm-hmm.
I like that. The value path moved to where?
Mm-hmm.
We're going to crush it.
Well, thank you for watching. Until next week. I don't know. Those are all the words I have at this moment.
Get back to building. We'll get back to building next week.
We'll get back to building next week.